Hey everyone, Ubisoft has now got it into more hot water, and at this point, they can't be serious with how stupid some of these things are becoming. Beyond the Assassin's Creed stuff, I gotta talk about also BioWare and Dragon Age later on too, with how much of a mess that is going on over there. But first, Assassin's Creed Shadows. I did my big expose in my previous video where I told you guys a bunch of stuff I was told by an insider at Ubisoft. And apart from the fact that Ubisoft is still trying to erase Yasuke from their promotional material so people will buy the game and somehow hopefully not realize that Yasuke is in it, which yes, it's as stupid as it sounds, Ubisoft has now gotten into more hot water. This time it's with the historians, which when your game is a historically accurate simulation, or supposed to be anyways, the last people you probably want to piss off are the ones who actually know what is and isn't historically accurate. Before I get into one of the historians, another user did bring up an observation that also got people talking. Permaband on Twitter brought attention to the fat woman companion character in Shadows, whose name is Yaya, and they are explained as a strong ally of body. I mean, yeah, that's one way to put it. The problem here is that Yaya's unique attack is called Rikishi, which when you translate it into English, it literally means strongman or sumo wrestler. Here's the thing, that amongst others that's drawing ire, there were actually no female sumo wrestlers during the period of time in which Shadows takes place. As Permaband puts it, lady sumo wrestler in Assassin's Creed Shadows in the Sengoku period 1581-82 most relevant for Yasuke, discounting the fact that women sumo wrestlers only became a rare thing in the Edo period decades later, 1603 onwards. Rikishi, her character ability, the word means strongman. Can't even find a more suitable word to describe a woman sumo wrestler, Ubisoft? Again, where are the culture and history consultants, Ubisoft? Where's the commitment to accurate depictions of history your reps keep bragging about? They would also continue, also discounting the fact that especially so during the Sengoku period, the idea of having a woman doing sumo wrestling was quite the widespread no-no in Shinto superstition. You know what would make me laugh even harder though? If it turned out that Yaya was affiliated with the Yasuke faction, that would be almost comedic irony. The reason why this would be funny is that the Yasuke faction, which I'm probably mispronouncing to be real with you, was led by Usugi Kenshin, who was a warlord that was apparently very superstitious and very religious when it came to the traditions of Japanese culture. So I did some digging, and yeah, women sumo wrestlers are not exactly something that ever really existed back then. Cobrutus Rambo, a friend of the channel, actually chimed in with his knowledge on the subject. I won't read his entire tweet, it's quite long, but I'll paraphrase it. Basically, females were strictly forbidden from becoming sumo wrestlers, especially during this period in Japan. It was about as historically accurate as, say, a legendary black samurai saving Japan, but this is Ubisoft, so who are we kidding? Then, of course, there's the fact that Japanese women in general were not allowed to enter many sacred locations within Japan. A sumo ring, by the way, is one of these sacred places. Reminds me kind of my own religion growing up, which, by the way, is Christian Orthodox. Because whenever I would go to a church, there would be an area behind the priest that held their sacred texts and whatnot. And none of these things or places were ever allowed to be entered by women. It was strictly for men and remains like that to this day. The reason being is that women are seen as impure, I guess, and are not allowed in. That will probably piss off the feminists, but don't get mad at me, alright? I didn't start these religions. Cobrutus brings up an example where in 2018, an official who worked with the Japan Sumo Association collapsed within the ring during a speech. I actually found the article that referenced what Cobrutus was talking about, and the paramedics were called. And these paramedics ended up being females, and they had to step into this ring, obviously, to get to this executive guy and help him. But these women were told to leave the ring immediately upon entering it. And the Japanese Sumo Association actually got a lot of blowback from the public for them holding tradition like this over this man's life. He survived, by the way, and the association officially apologized to the female paramedics and, thanked them for saving the man's life, despite them technically breaking tradition. When these paramedics left, salt was thrown in the ring to purify it because, again, according to ancient Japanese culture, women are seen as impure. Again, don't get mad at me, I don't make the rules, but the point is that Ubisoft incorporating this Yaya woman, who is a fat female sumo wrestler, is basically sacrilegious if you are looking at her inclusion through the eyes of what this time period was all about. This would be like a woman leading the city guard in Assassin's Creed Mirage, which of course was a game based in Baghdad, a place that is obviously full of Muslim people. I find it funny, by the way, how Ubisoft was so respectful and culturally accurate when it came to how they depicted Baghdad and the Muslim religion within that game. If you've played it, there were no women in power, outside of that one assassin lady that trains you, but she wasn't, technically a part of the Islam power hierarchy or anything like that. But the actual society that the game takes place within AC Mirage was strictly men in power. There were no female guards or policemen, nothing like that. So it's funny how Ubisoft can actually pay respect when the religion and society they are depicting are notorious for going after people who disrespect their religion. But I guess Ubisoft saw the Japanese as pushovers who wouldn't get mad if they bent the rules, so to speak, like this. And because of it, now we got fat female sumo wrestlers alongside black samurais. This is all, of course, offensive to Japanese culture. It just is. Some people tried to attack Brutus, claiming in history that there was a moment recorded where an emperor named Yuriyaku had two women fight in loincloths, but that gotcha doesn't work. These women weren't actually sumo wrestlers, nor was that recorded moment an officiated match that was deemed legit by the Sumo Wrestling Association. That was literally just a rich emperor guy who was bored and just wanted to see two women in loincloths, slap each other around so he could laugh at them. It's like the modern day equivalent of a guy pouring Hennessy on some women in a club and throwing some bills on the ground so he could laugh as they fight over each other for the money. For his amusement, I guess. Not the best comparison maybe, but I figured I will nip that stupid gotcha in the butt while we're all here, and it doesn't end there, fellas. There was this other video that got people talking where a streamer was playing Shadows and showed how he was unable to hurt the Portuguese trader with his weapon, but he was able to destroy all the goods and infrastructure surrounding him. Then Dr. Alaric Naude would retweet this and get a big response where he would say, "Isn't it interesting? In Assassin's Creed, it's okay to massacre women, peasants, and Shinto priests. It's also okay to vandalize temples, but hurting Portuguese people actually, is not allowed. Why? Because the game doesn't permit it." It is interesting how you can literally behead a peasant woman without remorse in-game and send her head flying in the air with blood shooting out of her neck. But harm a Portuguese merchant? What are you, some kind of monster? Another user would reply, "I am French, we love Japan, Ubisoft, it's boycott, never seen such violence in an Ubisoft game. As luck would have it, this happens in a game based in Japan, racist game on Asians, imagine the opposite, a Japanese in Africa who kills black people." I mean, they're right, but we all know if such a game existed, the press would lose their collective minds. I know that I keep comparing Shadows to Resident Evil 5 because it is, in my opinion, the perfect inversion of the same problem. Resi 5, you're a white guy, or black woman I guess if you play Sheva, shooting black zombies, yet this is racist and cannot exist according to games journalists. But if Ubisoft were to make an African Assassin's Creed game where anyone but a black person was killing other black people, it would be considered heavily racist and problematic. But it's totally fine here to just kill Shinto priests, which, by the way, would be insanely sacrilegious in Japanese culture for very obvious reasons. Dr. Naude would respond to the concerned French user with, "It's not the fault of the French, it's the fault of the crazies at Ubisoft. If they didn't have double standards, they would simply have no standards at all," and he's right. What this comes down to is that Ubisoft has been completely rotted out from the core by activist morons who desperately claim that they don't see color or gender, when in fact, all they do see is just that. The only reason why that Yaya character is a woman is because Ubisoft, like many other modern Western companies, they all just kind of see male characters as largely problematic, and therefore, if they can find any excuse to put a woman in a male-dominated field, sumo in this case, they'll do it. Even if it makes zero sense at all, especially for the time period. A Japanese user would say this about the clip where Yasuke can't harm the Portuguese merchant. Honestly, I feel like saying F Europe or something like that. Ubisoft created that level of hate. It's a game, so don't get too excited, okay? Can you laugh off the creation of a fictional foreign hero, the slaughter of your own countrymen, the creation of a non-existent black slave culture, and the insult to your own culture, and that reply is really what it comes down to. Ubisoft is effectively sacrificing the culture of Japan on a silver platter for their so-called woke gods. There's really no other way to put it. Because that's what they're doing and they know it. Like I said, the fact that Mirage didn't spark any backlash or had their culture treated horribly by Ubisoft, that is a clear double standard. Maybe if Japanese people killed anyone who disrespected their gods or religions, then Ubisoft would never do any of this. It's the only logical explanation, because how do you get the Islamic Assassin's Creed game right from the first go but not this? It's simple. Gross incompetence at every level. Dr. Naude would respond to that user who was frustrated that their culture was being destroyed to appease liberal cultists with, "I understand your anger, but don't forget that the majority of European gamers are opposed to this. That's why Ubisoft is in the red." And he's right, Ubisoft is dying, guys. It just is what it is. And I think if companies continue down this destructive path that they've chosen, they will only end up becoming just like Ubisoft as well, because players are obviously sick of these things. The entire games industry is still in flames for the most part. But they refuse to change anything despite the setbacks, like this from that park place. Leaked Ubisoft internal email comments on recent layoffs and studio closures as company stands at the brink of financial collapse. So we now got new concrete numbers on how much Ubisoft is worth, and fellas, I gotta tell you, it's not looking good if you're an Ass Creed investor. To show you how bad all of this is for Ubisoft, they were worth $12.17 billion in 2021. By January 2025, which is right now when this video comes out, Ubisoft is now worth $1.78 billion. That's a loss in value of 85% in just 4 years. This is what they've done to themselves with their moronic DEI decisions. The email in question in this article is your typical gobbledygook, where the higher-ups try to mitigate panic by stating that yes, a lot of you are losing your jobs, but the people responsible for these decisions that led to you all losing your livelihoods are still going to be employed. So naturally, everyone who wasn't at fault for the problems are being let go, and the problems are of course still remaining because, well, that's how some of these companies work. It's insane that Ubisoft is cratering this badly, but this is what happens when you refuse to remove the brain rot. You lost 85% of your value, and your master plan is to lay off the workers but keep the people who made the bad decisions. Yeah, this company can't die soon enough, man, but oh, it gets worse cause, well, more has been unearthed, and this is awful. Here's another clip posted by Shohei Kondo, the Japanese YouTuber guy I showed a few videos back, who got his Shadows video taken down for hate speech, but it has now since been reinstated. Anyway, watch this clip, and you tell me what's wrong with it. So in case you somehow don't know, yeah, you just saw Yasuke terrorizing religious priests outside of their holy grounds, then waltz into a temple and completely destroy the interior with his katana and face zero repercussions. He also at one point shoots an unarmed woman in the face with an arrow, killing her instantly. Again, nobody stops him. And a reminder that you cannot hurt the Portuguese merchant whatsoever, but religious temples and citizens are free reign for the great, totally real, please believe us guys, legendary black samurai to mow down in the name of social progress. This is not only insane, it's racist that you're able to do this, and Ubisoft should be ashamed of themselves. Sure, people might say, well, you control the characters so you don't have to do this, but the fact that you are even able to enter which should be considered holy ground for the culture that your game is based upon, and be able to commit such acts is ridiculous already. And the fact that this can all be done while you are a 6-foot-something black samurai is just the cherry on top. As I've presented to you aplenty, Shadows deserves its failure. It's not redeemable, they don't care about Japanese culture at all, and they see it as just another excuse to harvest to push their propaganda into it. Whether it's Japanese sumo wrestlers, unkillable Portuguese merchants, temples being ruined, and priestesses getting murdered in broad daylight with zero repercussions. This, my friends, is Assassin's Creed Shadows, and it is an abomination. 85% of market value lost isn't enough for Ubisoft, it must go higher than that. This game is such a bad look for both Japan and progressives and how they see cultures outside of their own. But that's what I got for you on Shadows right now. It's a massive travesty across the board. Now, let's move on to Dragon Age. So in case you didn't know, BioWare has been hit with mass layoffs following Veilguard. The game did below 50% of their expectations and only had about 1.5 million players. Mind you, that isn't technically sold, it's played, because you could play Veilguard using EA's subscription service. So the actual sale number is probably even lower than this. Apparently, they expected the game to sell 10 million by the end of the year. Yeah, I know, they thought this slop would sell almost half of The Witcher 3's lifetime sales in just 2.5 months. They were delusional indeed. Now it's been confirmed by places like Comic Book Resources that BioWare has fired every single writer that worked on Dragon Age Veilguard, and this is probably the most deserved firing of them all. Those writers who worked on this game made the biggest abomination that I have played in years. One of the people that was let go was Patrick Weeks, who weirdly goes by Trick, I guess, cause this Patrick guy is a woke leftist who doesn't believe in gender and whatnot. So being called Patrick is probably more male presenting, so Trick is less gender conforming, I guess. It's stupid, I know. Regardless, Patrick was the lead writer for Dragon Age Veilguard and actually also worked on even some of the old Mass Effect games. Yet clearly, at some point between then and now, Patrick either got snatched up and was body swapped, or he, like many others, began to drink the Kool-Aid and worship the cult. He said via Blue Sky following his firing, "I'm now looking for a new writing narrative position. It's been a privilege to work with so many amazing devs over my 20 years at BioWare, and I will cherish the memories of the wonderful folks in the community I've met along the way. Thank you all." I'm just going to be straight up. Why would anyone hire this guy? Why would you hire people who made massive commercial flops like this? This would be like hiring an architect who designed you a bridge that fell apart as soon as someone stepped on it and ended up killing hundreds of people. You probably shouldn't be an architect if you can't design safe structures, and with writing it's kind of the same. You were entrusted with an entire franchise, and you made arguably the biggest piece of crap I've ever seen from a writing standpoint. And if I ever hear that another game in the future has Patrick Weeks writing it, I'm going to immediately raise a red flag. This guy, by the way, was personally responsible for writing and creating the not-so-fan-favorite character Tosh, the golden child of Veilguard, for their non-binary storyline. Then we have Cromwell, who worked on Baldur's Gate 3 on the publishing side, if I remember correctly, who always seems to comment on when woke activist studios get hit with layoffs, yet never actually says why. Here's what he said about BioWare's layoffs. "I wrote more but then deleted it because I'm not about to ruin a long weekend. Something $30 billion corporation operating for decades, unable to provide the necessary economic foundation from which to support a big RPG, but again, I deleted it." So he said a whole lot of nothing. No, dude, that's not what happened at all either way. What support are you talking about? Veilguard was in development for close to a decade. BioWare was given carte blanche to make anything they wanted with this game, and this is what they came up with. What support are you talking about? It just sounds like you're butthurt because a game full of identity politics failed yet again for like the zillionth time. Nobody believes these excuses anymore. Stop blaming EA for this failure. This is not EA. This is BioWare's fault entirely. They put the non-binary Kunari and all the other slop into this game. Let me guess, when bad things happen to Ubisoft, it's also not going to be their fault either, right? It'll be something, another excuse that conveniently goes around the problem because you're too afraid to address it yourself. Because you know if you actually say why it failed, your so-called mutuals, which one of them is a guy by the way, that told a pregnant woman to end her life, that you follow Cromwell, don't try to deny it, and that tells me a lot about how you see people since you seem to follow people like that as well. That you know if you actually spoke the truth, you would be torn to shreds, so instead, you live in some kind of delusion with the rest of these people and refuse to actually say what it is, but I will for you. Veilguard was a woke nuclear bomb of a disaster. In my opinion, it was the worst thing I played last year by a landslide. If I didn't do YouTube, I would not have played it at all, but I suffered through it for the channel and I found it to be abysmal. Anyone claiming that it's the best Dragon Age game or the most well-written game of 2024, they should have their brains scanned for damage. And they should have to send their cranial measurements to a doctor so that they can be studied to ensure how far the damage is spread across their brain. Even Thomas Mahler, the CEO of Moon Studios, the people that made Ori and the Blind Forest and those games, and they're making No Rest for the Wicked right now, retweeted this Cromwell and completely eviscerated him publicly. Thomas Mahler said about Cromwell's pathetic excuse of a response, "I see this kind of attitude with a lot of young folks, and I'm not sure how we even got here. Companies are not in business to be charities. Their first priority is to make money to, at the very least, self-sustain and ideally to grow in order to make even better products. They hired these folks initially because they thought they could make a game that appeals to a large audience so that they can make them a bunch of money. What happened here is that they didn't hold up their end of the bargain, yet people, like this gentleman, then blame the companies for not keeping people on their payroll. If you're given a chance and you blow it, the reasonable outcome is that you're not given another chance because you didn't prove that you're worth it, and nobody is doing anyone any favors by encouraging people who are entitled. In this case, maybe the job just wasn't the right one for them. You would be doing them a huge disservice if you keep them around in order to repeat failures yet again. People need to be able to find opportunities that are right for them. While it sounds counterproductive, getting fired might just be the best thing that'll ever happen to you because it puts you onto a new track in life. So let me be clear, you are not entitled to the job that you have. You have to prove that you're worth the money you're being paid and that you have the company's best interest in mind, and Thomas is right. If I was like Cromwell, whenever a video would underperform on my channel, I would instead be blaming YouTube instead of looking inward to see where I went wrong from a content perspective. My video didn't do well? Well, it can't be my fault. It's YouTube's fault, or the subscribers' fault, probably. They must be suppressing me or limiting my views because something billion-dollar corporation. Or maybe I need to ensure that I don't make slop that nobody wants to watch, much like BioWare did with Veilguard. This Cromwell guy is delusional, and unfortunately, a lot of his takes often are too. Every time he seems to open his mouth, it makes me like Baldur's Gate 3 a little less than before. Thankfully, at least he wasn't actually involved with the game-making side of it, as far as I can see. Could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure he didn't. Which also surprises me that a guy who apparently works in publishing and marketing would be this out of touch when it comes to why the marketing for this game failed alongside its message. Like, isn't that your job, dude? Again, you know why it failed, you just refuse to say it. You don't release a game, win no awards, then have your entire writing staff fired like this and your answer is just, well, I don't know why that happened. Like Thomas Mahler said, you guys don't deserve the opportunity or roles you have and you proved it. That's all it is. You can cry and moan all that you want. But unless you change your ways and make things people actually want, you will just continue to get similar results. If there's something I dislike more than activists, it's apologists like this. They never can bring themselves to state the reason why things actually happen. Because if they did, they would know that the people they call their so-called mutuals or friends will then quickly turn on them like hyenas and eat them for stepping out of line. I have lost a lot of respect for Cromwell over time. I used to follow him because of Baldur's Gate 3, but over time he's just proven to be one of the most consistently out-of-touch people in the industry with every take that he has on things. I bet if you asked him why Dustborn sucked and nobody played it, he'd somehow find a way to just avoid the question entirely and not answer it. Whether it's Assassin's Creed Shadows with its complete disrespect of Japanese culture or the implosion of BioWare with Dragon Age Veilguard, the industry is changing and imploding, and rightfully so. Years of sheer hubris is catching up with these people, and now they got nowhere to run, and if you're looking for sympathy from someone like me, you have come to the wrong place. I will rip and tear until the deed is done. I want to ensure that none of this nonsense ever returns for this medium that I love so much. And I will continue to lead this crusade against these things for as long as it takes. You will not destroy video games. I destroyed all of you in 2024. And I will destroy your ideologies tenfold in 2025. Rip and tear, my friends. Keep it up. Don't let off the gas pedal even once, and let these activists know true fear in their hearts from their own actions. Thank you for watching. Subscribe. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you soon.